my name is Megan Hassing and this is my senior presentation. Let's get started. So, my philosophy of education has been influenced by many things, starting from my childhood all the way up till my college experience. So, I'll be sprinkling in some anecdotes throughout my little presentation here, starting with my childhood. So, when I was a little kid, I would pretend to be a teacher, and I would pretend to teach my grandpa, who is a very tall man who patiently sat in a very tiny chair with his knees pressed up to a very tiny table. But he willingly participated in my little make-believe, and I gave him pretend spelling assignments and gave him his own student name, which was Billy Bob Joe, which I thought was very clever at the time. Back then, I just used that as a way to pretend that I was an adult, and it was fun. But now that I look back on it, I realized something that my childhood self did not have the foresight to understand, that I was meant to be a teacher. So over the course of my school year, my school career that is, I've had a plethora of outstanding teachers. It is my goal to emulate the feelings that they created for me in their classroom, which was feelings of curiosity, excitement, engagement, and mostly inspiration. Some of those teachers inspired me to be the teacher that I want to be. But beyond that, I want to bring my own unique perspective into my teaching. With these thoughts in mind, I have 4 fundamental beliefs about teaching. 1, teaching should be a give and take. 2, reading should be the foundation of any language arts classroom. 3, a classroom should be a place where students want to come. And 4, teachers should find ways to bring out the best in their students. All right, so those are my 4 fundamental beliefs. Now let's get down into what each of those means. So my first belief is that teaching should be a give and take between the teacher and the students. Teaching is not a dictatorship where the teacher simply tells students what to do and they do it, and there's no reciprocal action there. The teacher has to learn from their students and learn what their students need and what they want. Because if you don't give them some of those wants and needs, then they aren't going to be motivated to learn. And that's what we want, is motivated students. As I will be teaching middle school and high school students, I need to consider what the adolescent student needs in order to learn and to be motivated. The book, Why Do They Act That Way? A Survival Guide to the Adolescent Brain for You and Your Teen, which was written by David Walsh, kind of for parents, but I applied some of his suggestions to the classroom. One of the things that he suggested is that parents and their children create a set of rules together. And that's what I'd like to do with my students, is at the beginning of each year, I'll get my students together and ask them what they think the rules should be for the classroom. Obviously, I will only take into consideration the ones that are appropriate for the classroom, and I will sprinkle in some of my own rules if my requirements are not totally covered by the rules that they come up with. And then we'll put that on a poster in the classroom so that everyone can see these are the rules that we all came up with together as a class. And we can refer back to those rules later on throughout the year, and they can see that we came up with these together, so they can't be mad at me if we all came up with them together, right? But it'll also be a community bonding experience where they see that I take into consideration their opinions, and that's really important for the classroom. But another part of that give and take involves student choice in assignments as well. I recognize that not all students have the same interests or strengths. In the English classroom, that means I should provide options for different reading materials. Students need to have a choice when it comes to what they read. Not only does this motivate students to read, but it makes them more engaged in what they are reading. In the book called The Book Whisperer, Awakening the Inner Reader in Every Child by Donalyn Miller, she states that by allowing and encouraging students to read what they want, she also endorses their culture and their interests, something we do not do enough in school. All right, so that's what Donna Lynn Miller has to say about incorporating student choice into the reading material. I took these beliefs into mind when coming up with my own beliefs about education, and I realized that I have incorporated some of these into my student teaching experience back when I was at Brooklyn Middle School teaching 7th grade. So at Brooklyn Middle School, I taught a short story unit, and I allowed the students to choose their own short story that they want to read. Now, each of the short story options that I provided for them had featured a different cultural perspective, whether it was Native American, Hispanic, or a Hmong folktale. They all had some sort of different cultural aspect to them. Now, I really got to see the impact that this had on my students when a Hispanic boy in my classroom who's not normally engaged in reading material suddenly was really engaged in the reading material because he got to read a story about inner city Hispanic boys. And he really connected with it because he could see himself in the story. And so he actually wanted to read the story, which was really cool because normally I'd not seen him that motivated to read. So it's important for students to see themselves in the reading material and to connect with the reading material in a different way than they can with whatever you just throw at them and force them to read. So giving them a choice really makes a difference. My second belief kind of goes along with what I was just talking about, is that reading should be the foundation of the English classroom. If students are to see that reading is a worthwhile activity, then we need to provide the time in the classroom for them to do that reading. And this will give them the opportunity to appreciate the gift that is reading. Again, in the book Whisperer, Awakening the Inner Reader in Every Child by Donna Lynn Miller, she states that time spent reading feeds more reading. The more my students read and grow into a community of readers, the more they want to read. And that's my goal, is to create lifelong readers. I don't want my kids to just read in the classroom and do it because they're told to. I want them to want to read. That's my ultimate goal, is to get them that desire to read. During my time student teaching at Brooklyn Middle School, I got to see the impact of independent reading time. Now, most class periods at Brooklyn Middle for the English classroom started with 10 to 15 minutes of independent reading time. And it warmed my heart every time I saw a student struggle to put down the book that they were reading. It showed me that they were really into that book, and I just love that because I'm an avid reader myself, and I love that for my students. This showed me that they were on the path to becoming their own lifelong readers. While I taught at BMS, I made sure to find extra time to squeeze in reading whenever possible. So if students finished an assignment early or I got done with the lesson early, the students were expected to pull out their books and read, so that they could see that reading is something you can do whenever you have time. Reading can be done anytime, anywhere. But another part of the reading process is choosing a book to read. And this is a really fun thing to do with students. So whenever I saw that a student didn't have anything to read, they're just sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs, I would take them over to the classroom library and ask them about their interests, what they've read in the past, maybe what movies they like to watch, because that can be another insight into what they are interested in. And we would find a book for them to read so that they could start reading. And if they didn't like it, they didn't have to stick with it, but as long as they started to read something. One student actually, I introduced her to the Mortal Instruments series, and every time I saw her during independent reading time in class, she would be reading one of those books, and I saw her progress through the series, which was awesome. And at the end of my time at BMS, she actually wrote me a little note that said how thankful she was for that suggestion, because now it seems to be one of her favorite series, and that's awesome. My third belief is that the classroom should be a place where students want to come to. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety and a sense of belonging comes before the need for self-achievement. So before students can focus on learning, before they can focus on getting good grades, they need to feel safe and connected. They need to know that I value them and care about them. And I want every child to enter my classroom who enters my classroom to feel like they belong there. I want us to create a sense of community and a sense of belonging. Now, this is probably one of the hardest beliefs to actually make happen, because I cannot control how students feel about me, how they feel about their classmates, or how they even feel about themselves. Because believe me, teaching middle schoolers, they have a lot of self-doubt and they have some self-esteem problems because it's middle school, and that's just kind of part of the process of middle school, unfortunately. But in the English classroom, I do get the opportunity to help them work on themselves on a different level than some of the other classes might get the chance to do. My students will be expected to write creatively, and whether it's short stories or poems. If they don't feel safe in the classroom and don't feel like they can open up to me, then they can't give me their truest form of writing, because most writing, especially creative writing, comes from the heart. It comes from personal experience, and that takes a different level of vulnerability to reach that level. So I want students to feel like they can open up to me so that I can get the best writing out of them as possible. And this is also really therapeutic for the students, so I want them to see the benefits of writing and how great it can be for the soul. When I was student teaching, I had the opportunity to work with a student who was a very talented writer, very talented artist as well. She was just brilliant. Often in her assignment, she would write a little note at the bottom in a conversational tone and kind of apologize for what she was writing and saying it was probably bad, and just constantly self-doubting. And that broke my heart because she's such a brilliant writer and such a good student. And so during one of these assignments, which was turned in online, I wrote a little comment, because you're allowed to do that in the assignment format. So I wrote a lengthy comment about how wonderful and brilliant she is and how she should believe in herself because I believe in her and that I'm super proud of her. So I just want to express to her how much I care about her and believe in her. And the next day in class, she clearly read my comment because she called my name kind of quietly. She said, "Miss Hassing?" And I go, "Yeah." She says, "Thank you for the epic comment." And I go, "You're welcome. I meant every word." And then a little while later, she goes, "Miss Hassing?" I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Thank you." And it happened a couple times. I think that she just couldn't get over the fact that someone finally believed in her and was willing to open up about their belief in her, because that's not something that middle schoolers often do with each other. And so she needed the teacher to step into that role and to guide her into believing in herself. And that just warmed my heart so much. So that's what I want to do for my students. I want them to feel better after they leave my class, not worse. I want them to know that they are great, and I want them to know that they can turn to me and that I will believe in them. Finally, I believe that teachers should find a way to bring out the best in their students. So not only are the book smart students important in class, all the students are important in class. And I want them to see that all students are bright in their own ways, because there's the book smart kids who will do great on tests and quizzes, but there are a lot of other different intelligences, and those aren't always seen in school. Howard Gardner has the theory of multiple intelligences that states that there are 8 types of intelligence, including visual, linguistic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, logical, musical, kinesthetic, and naturalistic. Now, a lot of these are not able to be displayed in the classroom because we just focus on a few intelligences at a time. So unfortunately, some students don't get the chance to show off how brilliant they are, which can make them feel dejected, and they just can make them feel unmotivated. So that means that I need to provide the opportunity for students to feel confident about their skills and give them opportunities to show off. I know that students should be challenged, and I know they should be pushed out of their comfort zones, but why should they have to forgo their strengths along the way? Why can't they show me their strengths before we get to that next level? It's all about building up their confidence. So before students can fly on their own, they need to be lifted up, right? One example I've had of an experience of this of my own with students is from Brooklyn Middle again. So I had a couple students in class who were not the best writers. However, they were better at communicating their ideas verbally. So they often didn't want to complete their writing assignments. They'd just sit there and do nothing. So it was my job to approach them and to get those ideas out of them. So we would just have a simple conversation, and I could jot down their ideas, and then that would be how I grade them. Not on their written work, but on how they showed me their knowledge verbally. And that worked out because it built their confidence and it showed them that I cared about them. So it connected with them on a couple different levels. So this creates a better bond between the student and the teacher, and it uplifts the student rather than making the student feel unmotivated. And that's really what we want, is motivated students who feel confident enough to pursue further challenges. So after participating in the education program and student teaching, I have learned that a teacher must connect with students and give them choice in order to motivate them. The little conversations I had with students about books and their interests are some of my favorite memories, and I will always cherish those in my heart. I have grown physically, emotionally, and mentally since the days of Billy Bob Joe, but my heart remains the same. I have been influenced by outstanding teachers, and I have researched theories on education, but at the end of the day, I believe in one thing. I have the heart of a teacher. I have a little extra proof of this because at the end of my time at BMS, I gave the students a survey, and one of the survey questions asked, what was your favorite activity that I taught you? And one student commented, "You teaching us." He wrote, "You teaching us," with multiple exclamation marks at the end of it. Sorry, exclamation points. I'm just too excited to get my words correct today, apparently. But that meant a lot to me because it showed me that, yes, I have reached my goal. I have become the teacher that I want to be, the teacher that would have made my high school, middle school, elementary self proud. And that makes me proud of myself. And I know that I will continue to grow as I go through my years of teaching. I know that it's going to be a long journey with lots of hurdles, but I feel that I am prepared for those hurdles and I am ready for whatever comes at me. So one thing I'd like to ask my fellow viewers and candidates as they watch this video is a little question that I have prepared. So how has your childhood influenced you to be the person that you are today? I ask this because a lot of my philosophy of education has come from my experience through my childhood, through my school career, through elementary, middle school, high school, by the teachers who taught me, by the lessons I learned outside of school, by my family and friends who influenced me, by those little lessons with Billy Bob Joe. And I'm just curious as to what has influenced my fellow candidates. Before I go, I'd like to say that I am proud of all my fellow candidates in this program. We have all been through a lot, and we are all going to change the world one classroom at a time. Thank you for listening to me today. My name is Megan Hassing, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.